Hello friends, welcome back to The Big Talk. I'm Trisha Brooke. In this season of The Big Talk, we are going to be talking with the most amazing guests from Podcast Row. Yes, this is a special season of The Big Talk. Podcast Row's mission is to connect entrepreneurs with podcasters to help them share their story. In January, this exclusive event was held in New York City along with an incredible partnership with GLOW, the Global League of Women, founded by Lisa Wang. GLOW is a new female-first community amplifying female voices that address critical issues, stories, and thoughts from business to politics and personal challenges. And all of my guests in this season have an incredible story, and all of you know how important story is to me here on The Big Talk. I am super excited to welcome our featured guest today, the incredible Sussan Nicholas. Sussan, are you ready to drop in?
I am, Trisha.
Sussan Nicholas, MD, is the founder and CEO of the Human Consciousness Consortium and SussanNicholas.org. She is the author of Conscious Books for Adults and Children, a Reiki energy healer, international speaker, podcast host, and conscious life coach. Dr. Nicholas is a physician and surgeon who, after a conscious awakening, transitioned her life into soul healing work. Today, she's a telepathic medical intuitive, energy healer, and transformational speaker on the energy of feelings and the frequency of money. As the founder of the Human Consciousness Consortium Publishing, Dr. Nicholas is the author of Duality of Being, Perspectives from Multidimensional Travel, and Two Parts of Me, I Am More Than My Body. Her diverse work has a common thread, which is to awaken humanity to consciousness. When she's not writing, speaking, or working with her energy clients, Sussan can be found hosting her weekly Be Conscious Healing podcast. Sussan, take a minute to fill us in on anything I missed and talk a little about you.
As usual, Trisha, I think you've covered it all. But I really want to talk about this conscious awakening and really realizing that the energy, there's that energy of everything at its core is energy, including our feelings, including this fundamental truth about ourselves. At our core, we are energy. Some people call this the soul or the spirit. It does not matter what you call it, it is energy. And that there is a consciousness and energy of our money. And that's what I really want to share with your audience today.
Amazing. We are going to get into that. But before we do, I would love to ask you to share with our listeners a little bit about what traveling to faraway dimensions means to you in terms of your conscious awakening.
Okay, so Trisha, I was in the height of what I called my professional success. I ticked all my boxes. I was a clinical fellow in cardiothoracic surgery at Stanford, and I thought once I reached this place that I would feel fulfilled, I would arrive. But instead, I found myself with this soulful emptiness. I call this crevasse void, where I was unfulfilled and I didn't know why. But I realized at that moment that it was not in my purpose. And since I was 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and I thought I wanted to do something very purposeful, that I could earn a living, that was kind of an honorable profession. And I thought doctoring was very darn purposeful. And I went about that believing that it was my purpose in life, that I was to be a doctor. And when I went through all the tests and the schools and the residencies and the training, I didn't feel right. I felt sad, like depressed inside. I had this woeful, this emptiness, and I kept thinking that each year, after each milestone, I would feel better and better, wholer and wholer, fuller and fuller, happier and happier. But what happens, it was the actual opposite. And in my final year of my clinical training, I attempted to take my own life. And that is when for the first time, I heard my higher self, the true energy of myself, speaking. And that's began my journey into this kind of conscious realm.
That's incredible. How did you identify what you were saying to yourself?
Well, like many people, Trisha, I thought that this mind chatter was my voice. But it was constantly going, full of grievances. I could never turn it off. It was like a bombardment. I could not feel comfortable being by myself or quiet because this mind noise would take over. And I thought that was my voice, and it was just full of garbage and chatter, like a lot of grievances and hurt feelings from the past that I had never really dealt with. And my way as a child of dealing with adversity was to be very quiet. I didn't have the voice to speak. If someone was yelling, I would feel like I'd go into myself and just be very quiet. And over the years, I just had built up, I think, just a lot of burdens, like heaviness within me of things that were unsaid. And I came from a family where many things were unspeakable. And they were very harmful, things that were unspeakable. And they were playing out in my life in this very unconscious way, but very real. I didn't know why my life was looking like it looked, but there was something I now realize was energetic from the soul of me that was playing out, that was creating my reality.
I love this so much, and I've had channels on the show before because I think we receive information as speakers and as mentors in many different ways. What I love about what you're sharing is the courage that you have to share this. As a physician, as an MD, as a doctor, which seems very scientific, very straightforward, you are actually communicating with us and with me and sharing with our audience right now that there is something more out there. And I want you to talk more about that. Let's go into the energy. Let's go into the universe. Let's go into the listening. Because I think we have to first listen in order to then be able to speak that language.
Exactly. So when I say for the first time I heard my voice, when I tried to take my own life, what I realize is that we are not the chatter in our minds. We are more than this physical body. But the true essence of us is the listener of that, is the observer of our life and how we see things, the one that's asking the questions of why. That is our true essence, one that's always trying to communicate with us, but it's a softer, more resolute voice that is often overshadowed by the chatter of our immature mind. And so for the first time I heard that higher self, and I realized I was more than this physicality, the one that I see in the mirror every day. I call it our human shell. It gives us kind of this way of interacting with our third dimensional earth environment. But the true essence of us is energy. And we need these physical forms. I call them our costumes, our shells, so we can interact in this very third dimensional environment, be in this earth milieu and have all the experiences of it. But we know it is limited. It's like the tip of the iceberg. And when we see the iceberg down beneath is the whole thing, and we're like, wow, we're only just seeing the tip. To me, that is the analogy of our body and then our soul. Like what's really, who we really are, what's really going on underneath is this expanse of consciousness of self.
We are pure energy. I study a lot of Deepak Chopra and Joe Dispenza and all of that, so I am on board with you. How do your colleagues feel about this kind of thought process? Because it's not based in science, but I am a believer. We are all energy and we are all connected. So how do you deal with your colleagues?
Well, in the medical colleagues, I find that a lot of them are steeped in the paradigm of the physical exam, of the physical body. That's all that we ever learned about in medical school. But now that I have clients who are physicians like myself who have found this unfulfillment, knowing that we're not truly healing in any way, that we don't just want to give pills or in my case, cut people open and pull things out, it's challenging. It's challenging to break the paradigm. And so there are people that are coming out of medicine like I did, maybe some that are on the cusp and realizing that they're unfulfilled or they're not doing the right thing, that are finally waking up and saying, wait a second, maybe we're missing the point. We're missing that there's a whole soulful self, a whole energetic self that we never address, we never learn about, we never even validate in the practice of at least what I trained in, which was allopathic medicine. And so yes, there's a pushback, but I do think that there are enough people waking up that are even physicians that come out of that secular mindset that I came out of, that are saying there's got to be something more, something different. We've got to change the paradigm.
And having you talk about it is how we're going to do it. I'm so
Yes.
thankful that you're here, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's dig into the language of money, speaking at the frequency of money. We talk about speaking on the big talk. We talk about taking stages. We talk about communication. I want to hear what you have to say about speaking the frequency of money.
Well, this is the most important thing I think I'm going to say today because it is so misunderstood. And so if we believe that, number one, we are a part of a benevolent universe that only wants what's in our highest good, that's what's the first belief that we must embody to really understand and accept that there is an energy of money.
Tell our listeners that one more time. I want them to really, really take this on.
that we are a part of, we are the embodiment of this beneficent universe, that everything that happens, even if we think it's negative or we don't like it or it's not palatable to us, it's in our highest good. It is showing us something that we must learn, we must transform. And so even in our money situations, and this energy of money, what I've learned about it, I'm telling you, this was the hardest lesson of all for me, was that money too has a frequency. It has its own consciousness. I call this the frequency of money, but this is energetic just like we are. It is powerful, this energy of money. It has the power to answer your request for money instantaneously. It has great power. But we don't know how to talk to this energy of money. And when we talk about this benevolent universe, this universe has laws. And one of the universal laws that we have never learned, at least I never learned, was that the language of the universe is the frequency of our feelings. It's not what we say, or even what we think, or how we act, or how we dress. The universe isn't worried about all the commutations and all the iterations of self. It's worried about your feelings. And it taps into the resonance coming from your heart center. And so if I, for instance, feel like I need more money or I'm desperate for money, I'm resonating a frequency of desperation or of anger or frustration even. And instead of seeing more money or what I need or what I'm saying I want, the universe replies with what my heart is saying, which is I'm desperate and I'm needy. And it shows up in your life with more things to be desperate and needy about, or more frustrating situations, more bills, more this, more things to be in need of. But what we must do is acknowledge that this is a conscious energy, and it's an energy of love. It wants you to resonate joy and love from your heart center when it comes to money. It is not evil. It doesn't want you to have a difficult time, but we have never learned how to communicate with it, or that it is an entity in its own right. And so just like you would communicate with someone that you love, a person, you would have to really almost love this money, love the energy of money and say, oh my gosh, energy of money, please. And we must speak to it in the present tense as if we already have it. So energy of money, I now have $1,500 to pay this bill on Friday, and trust and believe it. And the way that money shows up for us is not just this miraculous cash dump or deposit on an electronic screen. It shows up to us in ways to deliver our requests. So it might be connections, it might be opportunities, it might be ideas, it might be that surprise cash that you weren't expecting. But it's not always just one dump. You cannot be lazy when you request from the energy of money. You must be willing to raise your vibrational frequency and whatever it is you're doing to serve humanity for your money request to be answered.
I love this. I love Napoleon Hill and Bob Proctor and all of these folks. And what I love about this in direct relationship to speaking and to taking a stage, Susan, is that I ask my speakers to visualize being on that stage in order to serve the audience.
Yes.
And that's a frequency, that's an energy. It's the same thing. You're teaching us now, and we're going to go even deeper into this, how to have a conversation, a communication with the frequency of money. So if I'm putting a speaker onto a stage and I ask them to play an action in order to be captivating and to connect with that audience, you are actively going after for what you want in service. So that's the kind of designing of the life that I'm talking about on stage and that you're talking about in terms of your money frequency.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit deeper about the language. I love that you're telling us we have to actually believe it's already there.
Exactly.
So what does that language sound like? What does that language feel like? Because feelings are a part of this, right?
It's the core of it. So we cannot fool the universe. We cannot say one thing and feel another. Because again, what shows up in our life is the resonance from our heart center, from what we truly feel about it, no matter what we say. So unfortunately, this is not a fake it till you make it situation. I say, I'm just going to say and act and say, oh yeah, there is that energy of money, whatever, but then inside feel doubt or feel fear around it. And it's believing it to the point where you have joy around your experience with money. So there's a part of making your request in the present tense, in the now, that it's already done. Like that is how quick that the energy of money is. There's no order of difficulty in creation of this energy of money.
How do you know this to be true, Susan?
Well, I have experienced it, and I went through a dearth of like shit to get there, and I'm telling you, I went through a lot of coaching, and they'd say, oh, you know, when money's a problem, it's never about the money, and I said, well, what's it about? You know, like I would ask and ask, and I would become so frustrated. Like there were times I would scream with this frustration of money. And what it turned out was I realized that once I was behaving, like how I was behaving, how I truly felt is what I saw in my physical reality. And then when I began to get it, where I said, wait a second, this universe of ours, it's responding to how I feel about it. And when I feel angry and pissed about money, then I'm going to see angry and pissy things that show up in my life, things that make me more pissed. That's not really what I'm almost asking for. And the universe, I used to think, oh my gosh, the creator of all things, how could it not know what I meant? You know, like look, I got this obligation and this, but it's not. It relies on our feelings. It relies. We are energy, and it is relying on our emotional resonance to return to us in kind what it is that we are vibrating, not what we are saying or what we really want. So I think we have. One thing is our belief system that there is this energy, that it has its own consciousness, much like we do. And the idea that this is benevolent, whatever is being shown to me, it is showing me something I must transform. So when I see the desperate money situation, and I see a cycle or a pattern of that, I have to begin to recognize that as something that I am to transform and learn from. Not that the universe is this mean, angry thing that wants to harm me or punish me, but it's trying to teach me something. And until I can recognize the patterns, I don't learn it. And so when I started to see the same cycles and patterns occurring again, where I'd have a lot, then nothing, and a lot, then nothing, or like feast or famine type of situations in my money situation, I was like, what is this? And I began to examine it. And I say examining your beliefs is much like examining the belief in Santa Claus. And our children do it. Where as soon as you begin questioning, that's where the shifts, the vibrational shifts can occur.
Because you insert doubt.
Exactly.
So talk about how to remove doubt, because this is the thing. And I am on the same page with you, Susan. It's very easy to let doubt seep in.
It is.
And we have to constantly and consciously trust the unknown.
Exactly. And when it comes to trusting the unseen, it comes from a deep core belief. And it goes back to that belief in the benevolence of the universe. I have to go back to it all the time myself. I said, wait a second, what is this? And so when I see a situation I don't like, and I consciously say, I'll say it out loud, what is this? This is not what I'm intending to create. Why is this? And it comes from my feelings about it. Anytime I don't feel right, or makes me feel sick to the pit of my stomach, or I start getting frustrated, or I beat myself up, or do things like that, I'm like, oh, that's what I'm seeing. More things to beat myself up about, more things that are frustrating. So we must begin to examine. I call myself being an observer now of not only my own life, but just of our whole existence, of that of humanity. And saying, what are we doing? I think we are creating unconsciously, and we're settling for what I call the default condition of just like of an untamed mind. You know, that's what we are suffering from.
And I would like to point out that you are extremely successful and were very successful until you became more conscious. And that's what's so amazing is I just talked about this being unconsciously competent.
Yes.
You can accomplish a whole lot when you're talented and you work hard.
Right.
But if you're unconscious, you just remain competent. You don't actually raise your vibration.
Exactly. And I was doing something highly technical. I was in the eyes of the world. I was very successful being a surgeon. I was very good at it. I could do it. I mean, I could do heart surgery, and I loved it. I loved having that capacity and that precision to do that. But inside I was empty. And someone told me, a wise surgeon once told me, he said, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I could do heart surgery and I could do the work, but it wasn't aligned with my purpose. My issue at that time was I did not know what else to do. And I believed I had done it. And I just wasn't aware or waking up to know that I didn't even have language for consciousness at the time. to know that this was a possibility for me.
And now your language has been so expanded that you're being asked to speak on tons of stages on the frequency of money.
Right, and from that, I think it's because it touches every aspect of our lives. And each person has some experience, whether it be past or what they're experiencing in the present about money. It touches us every day in every way. And money, I believe it's just a proxy of our own self-worth. So financial net worth and self-worth, I think, are separate, but they are connected. So if I don't have my own self-worth up to snuff and I'm vibrating a very low frequency of unworthiness or scarcity or fear, and often shame, I came from the space of shame when it came to money, then that's what's going to show up in my physical world. And those feelings must be transformed in order for things to shift.
Tell me a little bit more about shame and money.
Well, for me, this is part of the unspeakable part of my early childhood. I was born of a teenage mother. I was my mother's second child. She was 17 years old. And my mother's mother was a prostitute. And when I was born, I remember her having a brothel. I didn't have any language for it, but I knew Grandma's house was kind of strange, and it felt weird. I didn't like it. And it was a forbidden, in my family, it was just unspeakable. There was a great amount of shame around that. And so it was never talked about. No one ever talked about it. It was like the grandma persona non grata kind of thing. Even though everybody knew what kind of business she was in, no one would ever speak of it, and it was highly shameful. So even though I didn't have language around it, this is the earth milieu I was born into. I didn't have all the physical memories. They were later as I grew up as a child. Looking back, I was like, something wasn't right. Why doesn't anybody talk about that? I could never speak about it. My soul remembered. And I carried that energy with me until I had to transform it. So I went through a process of what I call an ancestral clearing, where I had to clear my own money blocks and my own shame around money or accruing money or how it was accrued. I couldn't move forward, and I had to go back, and I had to do like a little walkabout. I had to do that with my father. I went back to where I was conceived, where my parents lived, and this very it was like this. I grew up in this like a housing project, low income, low intellect, low energy place, and I hated it. And I felt that most of my life I was running away from it. And for me to finally break through, I had to go back and I had to accept this. And I had to honor my grandmother for I cannot imagine that. And what your circumstance must have looked like that you felt that was your only choice. And I don't imagine anybody doing it if they have other choices. And so there's been a great amount of shame around that. And I even heard myself at one point saying, oh, I'd sooner die than be a prostitute. I would just kill myself. I would never do that. I couldn't. And so there was just this energy around this and this shame in my family and unspeakableness that once I began to speak it, and once I began to address it and confront it and kind of own it, this is what I am from. This is a part of me. Even if I don't live it, it is in my energy. I had to transform that, not just for me, but for my lineage, for my mother's lineage. They are British and part Native American on my mother's side, and I had to embrace this whole part of me, and I believe transform that for us as a family lineage.
That's incredible. And do you share this personal story from the stage when you talk about the frequency of money and the language? If I have the time and space for it, when I'm doing like a 10-minute talk or a 30, I don't often get into this. I have spoken about this on prior podcasts before, when I really get down to the nitty-gritty of what holds some of us back from achieving wealth and having a self-worth that's worth anything in this world. Well, I think everything that you're sharing with us is so powerful and so impactful and absolutely relates to the speaking platform, because I know how many speakers come to me and say, I don't ask to be paid, I don't know how much to ask for, and that's a frequency, that's a vibration. So when we are serving and being productive and relating directly to the frequency of money, the two become aligned.
Yes. Yes, it does. And now I have no issue, with my speaking fee, and I'm owning my worth. But I did for a very long time, and I'm glad that I have overcome that. And it's not enough to just say it. You must feel it. You must feel free of it. And so that used to be a tremendous area of shame. It was unspeakable, and now I feel that I can speak freely of it and accepting of it, and I have reconnected with, like, on a spiritual realm with my grandmother and my own mother who passed on several years ago. Really honoring them for bringing me into this life, no matter what it took, and honoring that energy and putting my work in this life to heal that.
This has been an incredible conversation. I want to thank you, Sussan, for being a featured guest today on The Big Talk. Where can our listeners get in touch with you?
You can find me at www.sussannicholas.org.
And we will have all of that in the show notes. Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this special season of The Big Talk with guests from Podcast Row and the Global League of Women. Check out the next episode, and remember, live your truth, be your authentic self, and drop in.